Hi, I'm Lizzie, one of the hosts on the Green Room podcast. In today's world, having those all-important conversations about money couldn't be more crucial. But how can we make our money move the world? On episode 44, we invited Anneka Deva, the leading force behind the Money Movers initiative, and Louise, head of FinTech at Deloitte, into the Green Room to discuss what we can learn about money and how our financial decisions can ignite change. What stuck with me was sharing some of our favourite things in life that money simply can't buy. Mine was a dog walk in the countryside, of course. You can listen to previous episodes on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Enjoy, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment below letting us know your thoughts. Could your money move the world?
Hello and welcome to the Green Room by Deloitte, a podcast where we ask big questions about the world around us. I'm Ethan Worth, and this is episode number 44, where we ask, could my money move the world? Thank you so much for downloading this episode of The Green Room. You can find all our previous episodes on our website, which is deloitte.co.uk/Green Room Podcasts. And today we're talking about how we can start looking at our money differently, from a line on a bank statement to a tool that can affect change, and exploring what could be the impact if more people knew about the power of their finances. And of course, in order to have this conversation, I'll need a glamorous co-host. So joining me today is the mover and the shaker, Lizzie Elston. How are you today, Lizzie?
I like that, Ethan. Nice one. I'm moving and shaking and really excited about this episode. Having done some research into it, it's actually incredibly insightful. So I hope everyone's going to enjoy learning some new facts and figures, and of course all the good stuff that our guests have been doing. One thing, obviously, this episode is about our money and moving the world, but I must be at pains to state that whilst we will be talking about it, we will not be sharing financial advice in this episode, as we might get into trouble with our legal team. But obviously, through the episode, we do want to empower people and our listeners with the knowledge to do, your own research and make decisions. As well as shine a spotlight on the systemic change that needs to happen. So I just put that caveat in for everybody.
Thanks, Lizzie. And who are the guests that will be shining that spotlight for us today?
So I'm delighted to introduce, first of all, Anneka Deva. Anneka leads Money Movers, a movement of women taking tangible climate action by moving their personal finances. She is also Partnerships Director at peer-to-peer learning specialists Huddlecraft. Anneka has 17 years' experience in establishing ventures, growing communities, and campaigning. She has worked with TEDx, the Advocacy Academy, and the University of Birmingham. Welcome, Anneka.
Hi, great to be here.
Lovely to have you here. I'm also delighted to welcome Louise. Louise is a Vice Chair and UK and North and South Europe Financial Services, Innovation and FinTech Lead Partner at Deloitte. She works with financial services clients, government bodies, regulators, advisors, VCs, and the broader FinTech community. Louise also leads our focus on women in leadership and previously sat on the board of UK Women in Payments. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you, Lizzie. It's great to be here and also to have a conversation with Anneka. I'm really excited to hear more about what she is championing across the world or in the UK.
So as is custom, we will start the podcast with an icebreaker. And it's just popped up here, and the icebreaker is this. What's something that makes you happy that money can't buy? Who would like to kick us off with that?
Good question, given the topic of today is about money.
Indeed.
For me, it's singing. I sing in a community choir every Tuesday, and it's a little ray of light in my week, regardless of what's going on in the world or in my life. It's a moment of joy in my week. So yeah, that's something that money can't buy.
That's wonderful. What sort of stuff do you sing?
It's very much 60s and 70s pop. So it's not nothing orchestral or very highfalutin, but it's a lot of fun.
Wonderful. How about yourself, Louise?
Well, I could say exactly the same, as I also sing weekly in a choir, but I'm not going to. I think something that makes me very happy is hearing birdsong before I get up in the morning. So certain times of the year it's better than others, but yeah, money can't buy you that.
Indeed, indeed. Ethan?
I'm ashamed to say, but I think for me it has to be a lion. I just love those few extra hours in bed, and not having an alarm wake you up does unfortunately mean I often miss the bird song though, but it's nice, those extra hours.
Yeah, I don't get that very often. Tend to have my 10-year-old kind of wake me up. But I suppose for me it's something like, and I know obviously money went towards buying the dog in the first place, but a dog walk through the countryside puts a smile on my face, and is obviously free. So that's my 10 cents worth.
Oh, that's a nice wholesome beginning to our conversation.
Wasn't it?
And I think a good place to start, given we're talking about all things money, is just Louise and Anneka. What is your earliest memory of money? And then how did your relationship with money evolve as you got older?
So I think for me it was understanding how much the pennies could buy in the local sweet shop. So 1 penny choose, that sort of thing. That is really showing my age. And collecting pennies and having various piggy banks around my bedroom, where sort of the jam jar approach to saving money. I think that's where it was, when I had some control of what I was doing with money. And yeah, that was from an early age, with sort of small amounts of pocket money.
Do you remember the half peaches?
Yeah, but I didn't want my mother to give me half peas, so I told her there were only 1p.
What about yourself, Anneka?
I think my earliest memory is probably being told money doesn't grow on trees, and having been told lots of fibs about, you know, the tooth fairy and Santa Claus. Sorry if there are any children listening. I wanted to test this out. So I remember planting a 2p coin in the soil and watering it diligently, and turned out my parents weren't lying about that one. Money did not grow on trees.
Always a savvy investor from the beginning. I see. And then how did that kind of understanding of money change as you get older, other than realizing that money doesn't grow on trees?
So yeah, interesting. I mean, do you notice it changing? It's a bit like technology changing around you. You just kind of, you grow up with it. And I guess it's when you started realizing that you had to save to actually spend on the things you wanted to spend money on, that people around you were making decisions and choices, and money was a fundamental platform on which that choice was being made. Yeah, and then I guess it personalized to you. What choices were you going to have to take? What further education choices? When might you get a job? Why would you hasten to do that or put it off? Those sort of things. I think it was gradual, sort of through osmosis almost. Was that the same for you, Anneka?
Yeah, I'd agree, and I think that definitely that kind of personal choice piece, you know, growing older, of, you know, how do I use my money? How do I get money? How do I keep money? That felt really something that evolved over time. And I think I was quite conscious from a young age of the inequality that exists in the world and people having different amounts of money, but never really making the connection with you know, my interest in making things better in the world and what I could do with my money. And that's something that I think is really fairly recent in my life, probably in the last 4 or 5 years, recognizing the power that I have with my money to actually make a difference about things that I care about beyond philanthropic giving. So I'd say that kind of recognition of power is probably much more recent in my life than for lots of other people.
And Anneka, that's probably a good segue, I guess, into the work you're doing with Money Movers, which focuses on giving people more confidence when it comes to money, particularly women. Can you tell us a bit more about that and what led you to doing that?
Yeah, so Money Movers, as you shared in the introduction, is a movement of largely women taking climate action with their personal finances and doing that through the power of peer support. So lots of us have bank accounts, pensions, savings, and for many of us, we also really care about climate change, but we haven't made the link of what our money is actually being used for by those bank accounts, by those pension providers. And so recognizing that where we put our money matters is really at the heart of Money Movers, but then being able to do something about it and actually make those shifts is where the Money Movers program comes in. So we train people up to host conversations and workshops around dinner tables and Zoom rooms with their friends, with their neighbours, with their colleagues. And through the course of 3 sessions, people actually then take action. They look at where their money is, they think about their values, and they think about how do I want to and how can I align my financial choices with my values, and they move their money. So in the pilots that we've had, 140 women moved £1.2 million for climate action through taking part in 3 of these coffee shop style discussions with friends. And so we think that there's huge value in people coming together to learn about these issues together and take action together.
What I love about your movement, Anneka, is we've just recently completed some research on female financial equality. And what is very clear from the research, and over 3,000 participants were involved in it, is that women have much less confidence in even dealing with their money. So the fact that yours is a women-led movement, when we know that compared to men, they have much less confidence around investing, around loans and around mortgages. And we really need to, as an industry, help equip women to make good choices that will help them throughout their lives and to move away from these moments in a woman's life where there is financial inequality, and working with the industry to help get that right.
Yeah, absolutely. And research also shows that, whilst women feel less confident investing, when they're asked where do they want to put their money, 83% of women surveyed say that they want to put their money in a place that is doing good for people and planet. So women want to invest responsibly, but the financial industry doesn't necessarily do a really good job of connecting with women and non-binary people who do feel less engaged by the financial system. And 16% of IFAs, independent financial advisors out there, are women, which kind of just shows you who is representing this industry at the moment, and where the distance we've got to travel.
So carrying on with the conversation about sort of looking at money differently, how can we sort of use it as a tool to affect change? Is it possible to align our finances with our values, and what might be the trade-off?
Yeah, so I think it definitely is possible to shift our finances to be more in line with our values. And I think that's something that's really exciting. Over the last few years, there's been a lot more that's come out in terms of options for people, especially when it comes to investing. And I think, we have to think about what's right for us in the particular moments that we are at in our lives. And so that's where with Money Movers, we don't give financial advice. The program isn't a program where someone gives other people information. It's where we give people the tools to start looking at where are your finances and what do you know about those organisations? What do you know about those institutions? And sometimes that information isn't so easy to uncover. And I think there's a definite role that industry can take in actually making it more transparent as to, what is your bank doing with your money? Or, when you've got a pension, what funds are your pension? What is your money in your pension being invested in? And what are those companies doing? So sometimes that information is actually, is out there, and we've just got to look and know where to look and make the time to look as well, because let's face it, this kind of life admin doesn't come at the top of most of our lists of an evening or a weekend. And then there is also a role that industry has to play in actually making some of the information more transparent. So there are options out there. I think there is definitely scope for more options, and when it comes to bank accounts, so for example, I think the high street bank accounts have got a lot of work to do in actually creating options that people can move their money to that are in line with their values. And there is good news on the horizon. Last week, Lloyds announced that they would no longer be directly financing new oil, gas and coal projects. So we are seeing mainstream banks moving in the right direction, but we need to see a lot more of that and a lot faster for people to be able to have the real choice out there to suit all sorts of different situations and times in their lives.
Did you know at Deloitte we support social enterprises through our 5 Million Futures programme? Like Change Please, they use 100% of the profits from their award-winning coffee to help people experiencing homelessness. They offer training, employment and ongoing support with housing, finances and therapy. Why not sign up to the Change Please Coffee Club to receive weekly deliveries of coffee beans? Or try out one of their blends? Just head to changeplease.org or check out the show notes. Now, back to our topic of the day.
Obviously, the slight elephant in the room would be that we are living through a kind of cost of living crisis. Do these principles apply only if you're quite wealthy and you've got a lot of money to invest, or does this apply to everyone across the spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We're in a cost of living crisis, and so I think, you know, I'd start by saying that for everyone, they've got to do what's right for them in that moment. And actually, it's not right for everyone in any given moment to be moving their financial products. But actually, for many of us, regardless of how much money we've got coming in right now, we are sitting on a certain amount of power. Lots of us have current accounts, even if we don't have a lot in those current accounts. And so we are sending a signal, we are sending a social license to institutions, depending on who we have our current accounts with, for example, regardless of how much money is in those accounts. And for many of us who are fortunate to be in work, we are auto-enrolled in workplace pensions. And so again, that's a source of power that many of us have without even really thinking about it day to day. So yeah, it's not for everyone to be looking at their finances like this, but for many of us, we have more power than we realise, even if right now when we don't feel particularly abundant in finance.
And Louise, I know that some of the research that you did on female financial equity, which you've referenced, also looked at that lens through what does it mean from an also cost of living perspective? Are there any kind of key headline findings in that respect?
So I think that there's probably two that I want to kind of emphasize. One is that women are less equal in financial sort of receipt and provision of services. And we know that from the original research. The cost of living crisis has just made that worse. It is impacting women more. If we know that single parents are adversely affected financially, and 9 out of 10 of single parents are mothers. So when you have the cost of living issues and the headlines of eat versus heat, where the women are not eating and the men are turning off the heating, sort of as the journalists and media have got it at the moment, that is just exacerbating something that is already a problem. And I think what cost of living has done is maybe sharpened the need for education. So a cost of living crisis with inflation driving a lot of that pain means you need to understand even more how to protect the money you have, how little or as much as it is, against that backdrop. And I think it just, as it says, sharpens the need for us to really help women and everybody, this isn't just for women, but really understand how finance works and how they can make good decisions within it.
Louise, I know at Deloitte, we've recently introduced a new sort of default fund that places greater focus on sustainability within the Deloitte pension plan. So it sounds as if that's, an example of where we can be, focusing better on where we put our money. Is there any further background on that, or are you seeing that happening across other organisations?
I think there's a lot happening across other organisations. I think organisations are learning how to do it in the most proper, I want to say, way. The FCA this week has come out on greenwashing. And so, unfortunately, in the rush to appeal to consumers who want to do sustainable things with their money and make impact through sustainability, then maybe in that rush, there's not enough background prep and thinking to, is the whole offering really as green as it's claimed to be? So I think this is a journey to run on terms of how do we make sure when people do take real decisions and want the outcomes to drive to their value set, that indeed the providers of it have actually got everything in place.
That's really interesting, Louise. And I think it speaks to the fact that, as well as on an individual level, there's changes that can happen, but also in a kind of more systemic way, we need to see changes in the way kind of money is invested. Do you think that we're on the road for that systemic shift happening? And if not, how can we help kind of drive that forward on a more of a system-wide approach?
So I would start from the kind of industry level and say we're definitely on that road, and there's a huge amount of commitment from the financial services industry and beyond, obviously, to get there faster. HSBC talk about investing $1 trillion over the next period in sustainable products, companies. That's just a huge amount of money and will make a massive shift. But I think where Anneka is coming from is we can't wait for industry to do this. As individuals, we can also really engage and make choices, informed choices. And I guess that's where the research that we've recently done is trying to allow informed choices around where you have your money and what you're doing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of organizations wanting to celebrate what they're doing and how much they're investing into sustainable businesses and products. But we also have to look at what they're doing on the flip side, because we know that the science is telling us, the IPCC have said that we explicitly that we need to rapidly phase out fossil fuel supply. So I think we also have to be critical at what we're not hearing from a lot of the mainstream companies around what they are investing in. But in terms of that kind of idea of a systemic shift versus the kind of individual action, this is often a question that people ask of, well, will one person shifting their bank account or their pension or making a sustainable investment, will that really make a difference? And I think the point is that actually together, if lots of us are doing this, at Money Movers, we're aiming to build a movement of women who collectively move £1 billion for climate action, which is not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of the financial ocean at all. But as individuals, when you are part of moving $1 billion, you might not have a lot of money yourself, but you then recognize that you're part of a wider movement. And again, it's about that social license of, what are we telling institutions that we want? Because there are lots of organizations out there, employers who actually want to make, for example, their pension, their default pension fund sustainable, but they want to make sure that that's what their staff want and what's right for their staff as well. So they want their employees engaging in these issues. They don't want to dictate to their employees, oh, these should be your values. And so actually for us having conversations, it's really important for us to have conversations together and to get on board and understand this stuff a little bit so that we can tell organizations, whether that's our employers, whether that's our governments, whether that's the organizations we bank with or have our financial products with, we need to also be telling them we want this change. This is important to us, and for people who are shareholders, for shareholders to be telling companies, this is what we want you to be doing, because often that's a fear for many companies. Oh, we can't do that because we'll upset the shareholders. But actually, shareholders are just everyday people. And so we have a collective voice that we could potentially leverage to enable those systemic shifts.
And Anneka, in the sessions that you run and that your movement supports people with, what are some of the examples where, I don't know, you help people understand a bit more about where their money can go? What are sort of some tangible examples of how we can help people through those sessions?
Yeah, so the first thing that, in the very first session that people host around their dinner tables about Money Movers, the first session is all about having conversations. And actually that's something that sometimes this question about how can we support people to move their money, we think it's just about information, but actually there's an emotional piece to it. There's a piece where for many of us, we're sticking our head in the sand when it comes to long-term finances because we're so occupied with the day-to-day. And so we equip people with kind of tools to start conversations about money, just like the icebreaker that you had about your earliest memories of money, things like who are your financial role models, and also conversations about values and what your dreams are for the future, for yourself, for your family, for the world around you, and to really get people thinking in that kind of longer term time horizon. And then we support people to actually map out their money and get them to reflect around some key questions around what do you know, where do you need to find more information, where do you think if you made a change there that would have the biggest impact. And really that's to get people started on a learning journey to go away and do more research. And then the kind of third key tool in our sessions is peer support. So in one of the sessions, you come back and you have a peer coach, so it's somebody else in your group. And that person uses a coaching approach, a question-based approach, to ask you about how you might make some of those changes and what's stopping you and what some of the blockers are. Because sometimes it is literally information, but often it's, oh, well, I'm just not making time to look into that, or I got really overwhelmed when I opened up my online platform for my pension. And so that peer coaching really supports people to get into the details of what is stopping me from taking action here, and what do I want to do. And then that has a ripple effect where people then go on to continue having these conversations with their colleagues or with the people in their group, or even with their families or their spouses, and kind of gets people started on that journey to thinking about this.
So Anneka, it's been fantastic learning about what money movers are doing in these sessions, and I'm also delighted that you're working with Deloitte on this as well. Tell us more about how you're involving our Deloitte colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. So Deloitte are an employer partner for money movers, and so what Deloitte are doing at the moment is that there are 20 Deloitte people who have been trained up to be money movers hosts from across the UK and also beyond, and each of those 20 hosts are running these money movers sessions with colleagues as we speak, and so this autumn over 120 Deloitte colleagues will take part in the money movers program and think about moving their money for the planet. And the program kind of operates on a one-for-one model. So for every person who takes part in the program at Deloitte, that also is supporting somebody in the community to be able to take part in the program. And we're really delighted that 120 people from Deloitte's charity partners, as part of the 5 Million Futures program, are going to be able to take part in this program as a result of Deloitte's support. So yeah, we're really excited about the impact that will make both internally in Deloitte and also externally in the community.
And Louise, I think we touched on this at the beginning, but it'd be good to hear a bit more from you about on this theme of tangible examples of what individuals can do. Is there anything specifically for women, given that the disparities in the figures that you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, to help them engage differently with investment?
So yes, there's quite a lot, but it's possibly not easy to find. And a lot of the major brands and big institutions are really trying to cut through so that they can talk directly and give confidence to people, women that are unconfident and really don't know where to start. And I love the idea of the peer-to-peer support, because actually that's an ideal. If you could do that at scale, that would be absolutely ideal in terms of moving away from the fact that roughly 2/3 of women do not do any investing other than their pension. So to the point that Anneka makes about it's maybe they have an auto-enrollment, so that's why they're investing in a pension, but everything else is far too far in the future and they're not making those decisions now. And I think the way that certainly the FinTech sector as a whole, which is coming up with new ideas, new ways of reaching consumers, partnering with maybe more heritage organisations around this, I think can be a real spark for change. And we're going to see more of that, definitely more of that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned peer-to-peer. I think I have an all-male WhatsApp group where we message about various crypto and that kind of stuff, which yeah, maybe you need that in a more of a kind of organised way, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the thing,
frankly,
Ethan.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Louise.
I was going to say, frankly, it's the men that are doing by far and large the most investing in crypto assets. We need to change that too. Women are not risk averse. they are risk aware, and we need to allow that education around these new digital currencies, digital assets, to be accessible, so they can also have that part of a portfolio of thinking, if that's what they should wish to do. But it seems very odd that it's a male preserve at the moment.
And what you said there, Ethan, about a WhatsApp group, mostly men or completely men, that's something that we hear, talking about money and talking about investing, that's something that we hear from a lot of women who are involved in our program. They say, oh yeah, my partner's involved in a group, but I don't really, I end up just getting switched off by how male heavy that group is, or those conversations are. And I think there is something really important about us figuring out what are the safe spaces for ourselves. No one can ever tell you what is a safe space for you, but actually what is the space where I feel like I can say things, I can ask questions, and I can share ideas, where I don't feel like I will be judged or spoken down to. And I think that what would be amazing to see is loads of women's WhatsApp groups where they're sharing ideas about investing, about all sorts of different new financial products out there. That would be incredible to see.
It's really positive, I have to say, listening to this. It's really empowering, and it feels like there's definitely change that's being made. And I can't remember, you were saying something earlier, it sort of reminded me of my first experience with money, which I suppose was a little bit to do with the first icebreaker. But I was just thinking how far things have come from when I had my very first bank account, which I remember, and I was 8 years old, and I had a Griffin Saver bank account, which was with Midland Bank, which of course became HSBC. But the funny thing is I've still got the same account number today for my current account. So but yeah, that I know we're jumping around a bit here, but it just took me back to that sort of first initial experience of money, and how these things stay with you, and how they develop, and how we should all now be having these conversations that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that points to the intergenerational aspect of this, where actually, if you have an ethical ISA, for example, opened for you when you're a child, then you may start having those conversations. If your mum has been part of a group where she's been having conversations about money, she's likely to have some of those conversations with you about the choices that you're making. And so we're then rippling through generations some of these attitudes to, hey, we can care about having a financial future for ourselves, but we can also care about having a future for our planet. And these things can be aligned. So that's the other thing that we're seeing in our program, with women kind of passing these ethical attitudes around finance onto their children and their families.
And I think, Lizzie, to your point, it is rippling through. There is hope out there that we are beginning to fix this. In the research that Female Financial Equality study unearthed, in the 18 to 34-year-olds, they were twice as likely to be investing as women than the 35 plus. So the messages are getting through. And one would argue that a generation has less money to invest than perhaps the previous generation, but they're doing more of it. So that really is good news.
So we've talked a lot about the female element and empowering more women with knowledge and having these conversations. But Anneka, just stepping back from that, what if everyone could benefit from this? What would be the impact if we could all know a bit more about where our money is going and the impact we can have in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the future we want to see. We want to see men, women, non-binary folks all looking at how they can use their money for a future that is better for all of us. And so, yeah, Money Movers is a program that begins with women, but actually in the Deloitte pilots, we're actually having mixed gender groups. And we're really excited about seeing men and women coming together to talk about these things together, because ultimately it's about the future that will affect all of us.
Great. And as we're coming towards the end of the conversation, there's a few kind of questions that we've got that would be great to hear. So the first one, I think, is what's one thing that you wish you knew about money sooner that you could share with listeners now?
I learnt about it quite a while ago, but it's the effect of compound interest. I think it is out there as the eighth wonder of the world. Warren Buffett or somebody put it out there as that. But yes, you don't have to have a lot of money to start investing for your future, because compound interest just makes it more valuable. And I think that being learned at a really early age would be one thing that I'd bring forward, put it into primary learning.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'd really echo that, Louise. So to pick something different, I think I think something that I wish I knew was that investing doesn't have to be about just being greedy and selfish and benefiting just yourself. You can benefit a lot of people, a lot of organizations, and you can really contribute meaningfully whilst making money, whilst investing. So that's something I really wish I knew when I was younger, and then did something about it because of that kind of compound effect, and actually started investing when I was, in my teens.
Yeah, the magic of compound interest. I used to be a maths teacher back in the day, and we used to do, I think there's a famous proverb where someone wins a tournament and they get a one wish from the king, and it's that they say they want 1 grain of rice on the first square of a chessboard and then keep doubling it for every square on that board, and they ended up with all the rice in China or something, because they're just that power of doubling is so effective. I guess the other question we had was, what's one easy thing that we want people to do differently after listening to this podcast? Just one tip. And then what's the first change you'd like to see at an industry level as well?
On the people one would be go and have this conversation with someone next to you, or however you've listened to this podcast, but just go and have the conversation, because I think unless we can't keep talking, we don't learn. And that's what the movement is. Anneka, the people one?
I was actually about to say the exact same thing. And so I'll just extend that. I'd say go and start a conversation and make a commitment out loud to one tiny thing that you can do, because actually making a commitment out loud, saying to someone, I don't even know where my previous workplace pensions, I don't even know who they're with, and making the commitment out loud that in 1 week's time, I'm going to have found that out. That really is the thing that takes you from having good intentions into turning those intentions into action.
And from an industry, the climate crisis and pulling together to solve for this has to be a pulling together. It's not a separation or federation of responsibilities. And I think as an industry, writ large, and I'm not just talking financial services, I'm talking industry at large, needs to come together to converge on the big shifts that it's wanting to see. Clearly some of the government-led movements are all about that, but just doing it faster would be what I'd like to see.
And I would love to see every employer having conversations around their boardrooms with their employees about what their pensions are investing in, because actually there's so many companies out there who've got incredible sustainability strategies but actually haven't made any shifts in their pension schemes, and there's so much untapped power in those. So I would love to see every organisation looking at their pension scheme.
Yeah, and one of the statistics that we had in our research was that moving your pension has a 21 times more the impact than becoming a vegetarian on the climate if you move it into a sustainable pension fund, which I thought was quite amazing.
Yeah, becoming a vegetarian, stopping flying, and changing your energy supplier combined. So switching your pension has a 21 times greater effect. And that's from the folks at Make My Money Matter, who are doing really fantastic campaigning on this.
That
Amazing.
Is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, you just don't really. This is the issue, is it? We just don't think about these things. And so, if this podcast has helped people, recognize that, then fantastic. I guess it's time for the final question, which is the big question of the podcast, which is: could my money move the world?
Go on, Anneka.
I think you'd be able to predict my response, but absolutely. And I would say our money collectively can move the world towards a future where we can all prosper on a planet that also flourishes.
And my build would be on that, because of course the answer is yes, it can. But I think some people think of the capital markets as this alien thing that happens in a financial centre. capital markets is our money, and that money is running our world right now. And understanding that linkage between our money and things that happen in the world, I think is exciting. And of course, it moves the world, and it is going in a trajectory that I think everybody wants to see. It's how quite quickly it can move.
It's empowering, isn't it?
Thanks both so much for joining us today. Really interesting conversation, and lots to take away for our listeners. So thanks for coming in.
No, thank you for having me. It's been brilliant to be here with you all.
Lovely. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Green Room by Deloitte. We'll be back next time with another big question. This podcast is produced by our very own Pod Squad and hosted by George Parrott, Lizzie Elston and Ethan Worth. Thanks to our creative studio for their technical support. Original music by Ali Barrett from our consulting team.